Hi, welcome back to Exploring the Edges. It's been a week. This week, I think we're going to talk about new beginnings, fresh starts, and we want to kind of explore these topics and talk about all of the stuff that comes with a fresh start, not just the shiny parts. So I feel like even just for me, there have been so many fresh starts this week.
Mm.
Like so many personal fresh starts, business fresh starts, like all of these fresh starts that have come up. So maybe we'll touch on all of them a little bit and see what's happening. And it feels very exciting and makes me nervous a little bit because we sunk in as usual and talked about what we're going to talk about. And Jack said, I feel okay about you taking the lead on this one. And then she wrote many notes, and I don't know what any of them say. So I don't know what the plan is going to be today, but thank you so much for joining us and coming along on this ride. And we really hope that this conversation serves. I feel like maybe a lot of people are sitting in a fresh start
Mm.
kind of, area of their lives in one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for leading us in.
Yeah.
I think that many of us are finding ourselves now really feeling ready to walk forward without some of the stuff that we've dropped, without some of the stuff that we've left behind.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes when we're doing a lot of internal work or work in relationship, we identify these pieces and we're like, "Oh gosh, okay, that's crunchy." And we
Hmm.
when we work through it, and then I think we forget to do this next step, which is to like take a look around now and see like what does life look like without that.
Yeah.
And I think just, we can talk about our personal story a little bit more in this episode, I think, because I think it's helpful. But I think sometimes, we might find something like, one of the things that, and I don't want to derail where you're
It's okay.
headed, but one of the things that we've been sitting in is this student teacher dynamic that we've
Hmm.
that we've found in our relationship. And we've explored it a bit through astrology and through our composite chart and natally through synastry. But we've also explored it from the lens of past life
Yeah.
encounters, memories that we both have of each other in past
Hmm.
lives. And it's interesting, we have so many Saturn aspects in each of our charts with each other.
Hmm.
But I think once you sort of identify it, and we've been dancing around this a bit probably for a couple of months, just as we've been working through some of the power dynamics in our relationship. But once you sort of see it, okay. And even if we can sort of, Jen and I will typically drop in and see if there's a message waiting for us there. I'll say, can you see us from before? What does
Yeah.
it look like? We start to create these spaces where that deeper knowledge can come through. But then once you've done some work around it, okay, we have this student teacher dynamic. Okay, it's from this. Here are the aspects. Okay, it's
Hmm.
this. Are you the teacher? Sometimes. Am I the teacher? Sometimes. We have
Hmm.
this. Once you've looked at it and worked through it a bit, you come out on the other side. We're in a beautiful Venus Chiron transit right now. They're
Hmm.
conjunct. So there's been a lot of illuminating around deep old stories, deep old wounds.
Hmm.
It's seeing it and then saying, like, okay, now how do I walk forward with this new light, with this new understanding? How do I start to
Yeah.
shape my life around? And that's just one small example of one thing that's come up.
Yeah. One small example and one small part, because I think this like walking forward part is the part that people are always talking about.
Mm,
And they're not talking about necessarily all of the falling apart that comes with walking forward. And I
mm,
know in the past like week, especially for me, there's been like a lot of sitting and a lot of heaviness. I didn't really know where it was coming from.
mm,
And just really feeling it. And I know that you were feeling it from me, and some of it was your own, and a lot of it was mine.
mm,
And I think that there's this like destruction that often has to come. We could talk about death and rebirth, and I don't know how much we've spoken into that in the podcast, but we speak about it a lot here. There's just death and rebirth and everything, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. And it feels like this death or destruction part has to come so that it can be rebuilt with all of these new things, with this new knowledge, with this new outlook. And sometimes you can feel it coming. And I know that this week that I did feel it coming. And I even
mm,
said to you, like, it feels like slower than before. It doesn't feel, like sometimes I feel it and it comes fast.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't even feel it and it comes.
And
And
when you
then
say it, what do you
this
mean?
death, this death,
Uh,
this destruction of like an old way of being
mm-hmm.
to be reborn in a new way of being. And it felt like it was like really drawn out. Like, like you can imagine somebody like just laying in a bed and like slowly, 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 like this is how it felt.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Mm,
And you just never know when that moment is going to come. You just never know. I mean, sometimes you do, but I did not know when this moment was going to come. And it was when you had done the new moon pull
mm,
and we're casually talking about, a card that you pulled for me. And I read the first sentence on how to complete breakdown.
yeah.
And that was like the complete break, the complete like death,
Mm-hmm.
and rebirth, all from like this one sentence. I couldn't even finish reading the card.
And you were
And
just ready.
I was just ready. I was just ready, but I didn't know like, oh, it's going to happen tonight or oh, like this is going to be what triggers it. Sometimes it's just triggered and
Sure.
you just have to go with it. And sometimes I think that that can extend into different areas of your life in different ways. This like release, this destruction, this death.
Mm,
And sometimes it's places where you never thought it would be.
mm.
Sometimes you're walking with somebody, a friend or whoever that you've known forever and you feel like it's always going to be there. It's 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 just like and it just comes and it shocks you and you grieve
Oh, yeah, it's really
and
hard.
and you have to maybe like just accept and grieve until it just, but you can't carry this person with you anymore because it's stopping you from walking your highest path. And if you're not walking your highest path, then you can't help the people you're supposed to help and do the things that you're supposed to do in this life. And it's just, I don't think people are talking about that too much with it when it comes to fresh starts, all of the stuff that has to fall away. That can be really quite painful.
Yeah, I'm hearing in my head now as you speak into this, like sometimes, you have to let them go in order so that you kind of walk your highest path. And in fact, sometimes you have to let them go so that they can walk
Yes.
their highest path.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we have these significant relationships that have a big change associated with them,
Mm-hmm.
there is often this karmic bed, that we've been lying in that we're maybe not aware of, or there's this it's part of our soul's work in this life. And this isn't true about just casual relationships, but
Yeah.
often those like deep, heavy, significant changes in relationships that we are close to, it is because of this. And we don't always have that hindsight view into, like perhaps the vision that you held of them, the version that of them that existed in your own heart was holding them back.
Yeah.
And we don't know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we can think, oh, like I had to let this person go for my highest good.
Yeah. I completely agree.
But potentially your highest good is karmically soul contract
Yeah.
freeing that person from that vision of
Yeah.
themselves, and we do not know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important as you speak about this death, acknowledging that destructive power. And I've been feeling really heavily into Osiris
Yes, you
recently. I've been
have.
doing a lot of work in my masculine.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of death before death,
Mm.
of and I think a couple of podcasts ago we talked about this idea of reframing death as a birth.
Yes.
I've been sitting in this Osiris energy without really being conscious of
Yeah.
it. But I think where I'm going here is that something that's critically important is to acknowledge what in your life has survived those waves of destruction,
Yeah.
because on the other side of that is this clarity. Anytime we ask to be aligned, and I wanted to speak a little, one of my secret notes is to speak about this, but
Yeah.
anytime that we ask to be aligned, and there's so much power in this, every time you say, and it doesn't have to be a significant ritual or
Yeah.
ceremony, it's just holding this intention. Intention
Mm-hmm.
is so powerful. You hold this intention, like, align me with my soul's work,
Mm-hmm.
align me with my highest path, align me with the truth of who I am, align me with the work that I came here to do. Every time we hold this intention, we're actually rewriting the world around us.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, all the time we look at these shiny new pieces of ourselves that have emerged, but it is from the courage and willingness that we had to really face those, grief is a heavy,
Oh,
dark emotion.
yeah.
It's not a fun,
No, it's not fun to sit and grieve.
no, and I think a lot of us maybe a lot of us, I know for myself personally, like I hadn't really opened myself up to deep grief until maybe like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So even as somebody who was like very sensitive in the world and very aware of the injustice in the world
Mm-hmm.
and environmental crisis and animal abuse and racial injustice, I
Mm-hmm.
was tuned into all of these issues,
Yeah.
but I hadn't really felt the grief of them in my body.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's such a big feeling and emotion and part of our lives that has been shut down. And I think
Yeah.
we were speaking into this a bit last week and maybe before about like society and how it shapes like how we move.
Mm.
And we did a workshop series. And the in the final closing series with Sabrina that she'd done, she was talking about how insane it feels that you have to do all of this work to get to your core essence. And it
Yeah,
feels
just to get
like
back to yourself.
just to get back to yourself, and it feels like all of this work just to get back to like such a very important and integral emotion like grief,
Mm,
because I don't even know that we even fully see grief, at least in North America, in funerals. I guess depending on your culture and your family, maybe you do,
mm,
but you know, I feel like the funerals I've been to, some people are like maybe quietly crying, people are just like sitting and being solemn, but there's nobody wailing, there's nobody, and the grief that I've moved through this year and that you have, it's there's wailing and crying and heaving and all of this stuff is coming up. And I feel like it's hard to open yourself up to something that quote unquote, I'll say Lucy, you don't know exists
yeah,
because you are not witness to it. It's like being seen. It's
yeah.
why visibility is important, you know? It feels the same if you don't see it. It feels like you have to kind of like dig for it and figure it out for yourself.
Mm,
So it feels like it makes sense that it can take so long to get to it. And I won't jump into it all now because you're speaking into things that I think are very important, but it also ties into what we're talking about, how like these new beginnings, there's not always a path forward. You have to kind of dig for it and figure it out for yourself. And
yeah.
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I would like to move into that sort of narrative, but before we do, I feel like I want to just acknowledge even in your own speaking about that,
Hmm.
like this like we don't see grief in funerals.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about the grief process that I moved through recently, and sometimes the things that I grieve feel insignificant, in
Yeah.
society. And they're so deeply held in my own body that that's where my grief process comes in. But I typically do not grieve at funerals
Yeah.
because I believe in reincarnation and
Yeah.
soul families and
Yeah.
and so sometimes for me, even funerals are um I'm just holding the emotion of who's there.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, even I felt a bit defensive when you were talking about
Oh,
that.
yeah. And I did not mean it that way. It was just the
No,
only example
no,
I could
it's
think
my
of.
own, yeah, it's my
Yeah.
own crap, that
Yeah. A place where people typically,
are
quote unquote,
expected
would
to.
grieve and
Yeah.
they're not.
But this ties
Yeah.
right into what we were talking
Yeah.
about last week when we look around and we start to isolate the places in ourself that are not as they are supposed to.
Yeah.
And this is really hard because I think
Yeah.
we do this unconsciously. We do
Hmm.
it, even the people that love us, sort of
Yeah.
like help reinforce that sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my own stuff. I was just feeling like,
Yeah.
a funeral is a place where I'm supposed to feel grief, and I never do.
Yeah.
Feel like I've always had in my life, and I don't know whether there's a trauma undertone or what, but I've always had this like disconnection from
Yeah.
the grief associated with somebody crossing into a new stage of life.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's because I've had many lifetimes as as an Eastern religious
Yeah.
identity, feeling into these themes of reincarnation. But
Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm not even sure if that's the best example, but I
yeah,
just feel like it's not something that I feel like it's something that people feel and is hidden.
yeah,
Like it's
sure.
something that you do behind closed doors.
Yeah,
Like even, like I have parents whose parents passed away and didn't really see them like grieve in the way that you'd expect or in the way that I felt about that or anything.
Hmm.
And I'm sure they've grieved,
Yeah, grief
you
sits
know?
right in the same house as rage.
Yeah.
You know, like so much of the work that I've done in both my masculine and feminine was around acknowledging rage,
Mm-hmm.
deep sacred rage in the feminine and misplaced power in the
Mm-hmm.
masculine. And these, we don't really have spaces that can hold rage,
Yeah.
you know? And same as even deep joy, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't have spaces that can hold that either because we're so aware of how we're going to be perceived by somebody or what
Mm-hmm.
we're setting off in them or yeah, we police ourselves even around
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah.
But to really hold grief, you know, like you really have to be initiated as a space holder in order to
Yeah.
witness this. Same with rage.
Mm-hmm.
Rage can be really scary
Mm-hmm.
if you sort of have not met those places yourself.
Yeah.
But this is what I think is happening right now in the collective is we're starting to, and I want to talk about what you're talking about in terms of how to not really have a blueprint for a new
Yeah.
start. But I feel like this is calling me like as we sort of start to walk towards our inner emotional body. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe we have a mindful practice, or we're starting to meditate, or we're starting to journal. Maybe we're doing work around the moons, we're manifesting
Mm-hmm.
and clearing, and we're starting to walk into that sacred space, that deep emotional body. And it is a gentle, long process. So we sort of start to walk into our own internal gardens and we start to open and unlock the gates that lead us further and further into our truth. As we walk, we start to encounter these, it's sometimes it's manifested physically in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think sometimes we're sitting and meditating or we're doing an embodiment practice and we're feeling into, I don't know, that party that we didn't get invited to in fifth grade,
Yeah.
right? Like Clarissa's party, we didn't get
Yeah.
invited, everyone else did. And then like we start to have this like pain in our back,
Yeah.
right? Like while we're doing this visualization process. And so I think the deeper we walk into our truths, the deeper the emotions are that we're uncovering.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a safe place to explore them,
Mm-hmm.
this is, they just sort of stay. And
Yeah.
as we work, we get deeper and deeper into that, but also comes deeper and deeper support. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this sort of ties into what you sort of want to speak into, which is that there's like if we have a pain in our back, we can go to the doctor and be like, I have this pain in my back.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get like a PT routine or a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully not a prescription, right?
Yeah.
Because
But often a prescription,
yeah,
you know?
but I think there's so much less support in the territory of the work that I do or that you
Yeah.
do, which is to really hold a safe space for the emotional processing of this physical manifestation of this pain.
Yeah.
And so deep pain like rage and
Yeah.
grief, like there's not a space.
Yeah.
And so this is what you and I know need,
Yeah.
we know that the world needs this.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a safe integration space to do this deep emotional work, this deep emotional
Yeah.
processing. And as we start to try to translate that, we hold such a big love. And as we start to translate that into like, okay, how can we share this love with the world? What does it look like? I think what we're experiencing, what we're facing now is that it doesn't exist right now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a blueprint to do it. And I think this is it. This is one of many fresh starts. Maybe you're starting a fresh start in your relationship. Maybe there's a new job. Maybe there's this. Maybe, and for us, it's just this knowing that there's going to be a big shift. And, like sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you have a fresh start and it feels still a part of the system, but it still feels good. Like, oh, I'm going from this job that I hate. Now I have like my dream job lined up.
Hmm.
And sometimes you feel like your fresh start is to step out of the system. And we tried to get into it last week. The Gemini energy was strong.
So strong.
We were personally going through so much.
Hmm.
The energy was insane, and it was just really hard to keep it focused. And I think it's difficult to keep it focused anyway, because again, it's just so outside of it. But
Hmm.
this when you know that it's a fresh start, but you don't know what the next steps are, and you're just like trusting that they're going to come or that they're going to work out, and it's sitting in all of this stuff that people don't necessarily show. They show you the end results, Instagram, end results,
Sure.
Facebook, end results, YouTube, end results. Everything's the end results. It's not like this sticky, messy fear that creeps in, you know? And I was
Mm.
sitting in all of this stuff, you know, about like these old structures and like asking my guides. And if you guys are interested, like we can dive deeper into like how we met our guides and things like that and maybe talk about that would be helpful for you. But, you know, sinking in and asking like is there something that I need to do? Is there a practice that I can do to help release like these old structures? Asking all of these questions and then no, 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 no. Okay, do I just have to like stop believing them? Yes.
Mm.
Stop believing in it.
It's powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful, but then you're like, oh, okay, that's it. And it seems like it's very simple. You just stop believing. But it's difficult because like you've spent 40 years being kind of like initiated into this way of life. You know, you go from A to B to C to D, you have a job, you get a house, paying rent is normal, not liking your job is normal. And I'm not saying I don't like my job, but
Feeling unsatisfied in your relationships is normal.
it's all
Feeling
normal.
unfulfilled in your work, normal.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mm.
it's you know, it's this narrative of, oh, you're lucky you're only paying X for rent because you should be paying blah based on the
Yeah, it could be
market.
worse.
Could be worse. This could
Yeah.
be worse, or there's not like a solution to be able to spend more of your time doing the things that are meaningful that are not necessarily a part of the system in terms of like making money.
Hmm.
So some of the things that we want to do are not things that bring in income. This podcast feels very, very important.
Mm.
We're not making income off of it. It's still taking our energy and our focus and our being to go into it, right? And so it's trying to come out of this system that requires like this money or whatever to be put back into the system to pay the rent, to go and do the job, and then it leaves nothing left to do the things that like your heart and your soul are calling you to do.
Yeah, and I can hear you.
Yeah.
I can hear you struggling with that balance even in you speaking into it now.
Yeah, and I mean it's fresh and but it's just going, oh, okay, so I just have to not believe these anymore. Okay,
Well,
great.
I think
Like,
it's I
but then I had this energy to just go, you know, but it's still difficult, I think, to navigate. And it goes back to this not having a blueprint. Okay, well, you just stop believing all of these structures that have been presented to you as like the way to move through life successfully.
because
So
I
then
but
what do you do?
I think something that you said earlier this week feels important to weave in now.
Mm,
You were like, well, you just have to catch yourself and start saying it differently in your mind. You were like, you
mm,
just have to like catch it and rewire it. You just have to
hmm.
keep telling yourself
It's a
that this is,
practice.
yeah. And I was like, no, I think it's only a practice like in the very beginning, and then it
Yeah.
becomes part of your adopted beliefs.
Yeah.
And I think it's important because money is such a tough one to start with,
Yeah.
but maybe even if we step outside of that a bit and just say something like, um, in order for me to feel safe, I have to work 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just start there
Yeah.
without dismantling in the ways that I like to do, burning it all.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just start there. Like, in
Hmm.
order for me to feel successful in my job, I need to be fully serving in my heart wisdom.
Yeah.
Like, I think we can start to peel back. In order for me to feel like I'm a successful parent, I need to be perfect 100% of the time.
Yeah.
In order for me to feel like I'm a good partner, I need to be a good partner 100% of the time.
Hmm.
And we start to peel back these beliefs. And something that I also wrote down is we have to start looking at the collection of thoughts and behaviors that are in our day to day.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking specifically about today for us, if we shared a bit of insight into
Hmm.
our own personal practices in our lives.
Yeah.
So this morning, a teacher of mine is offering a morning sadhana
Yeah.
with Sanskrit chanting. And what a beautiful offering. We've been sitting
Yeah.
in that medicine every morning. This is the sixth day that we've been waking up
Hmm.
early, setting the alarm, sitting in that intentional, medicinal vibration.
Yeah.
It's intentional. We also drop in together, bring our energy together. That's intentional.
Yeah.
We also speak these words like, this is going to work out. I'm not sure how yet, but I know it's going to work out.
Yeah.
We also acknowledge all of the small wins. This
Yeah.
morning we're brainstorming. This is what we think could happen. Boom, instantly we get a message.
Yeah. Talk to so and so,
Hey, is
looking
this,
for you, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
hey, is this it?
Yeah.
Right? And so this is the way, we also spend time in gratitude at our meal. We
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh my God, this is so special.
Yeah.
This feels really special, this silly
Yeah.
little art in your coffee."
Oh, it was not silly. It was
But do
so
you know what I
special.
mean? And
Yeah.
so this is our day so far today.
Yeah.
So far today, this is what we've done.
Yeah.
This has been our day.
Yeah, and I think that it's super important, and we touched on it last week, this rewiring of the brain, which then rewires your entire life.
But these are the structures that we're
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, you point them out, point them out, point them out, and then you just see more and more and more of them.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
I'm not saying that like we said last week, this
Yeah.
isn't a copy paste.
No, it's not.
It's so, hyper individualized to
Mm-hmm.
what everybody's looking at and what they're working on, but we can start to look at which fish are swimming in our pond
Mm-hmm.
being our consciousness on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so you're right, like you were sitting in this pond and it was full of this isn't going to work out. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to pay my rent. Where's money going to come from?
Yeah.
What am I going to do when there's scarcity, scarcity, scarcity,
Yeah,
fear,
it
scarcity,
just
fear?
I went from like, paddling on top of the pond to just being like pushed underneath it, just
Yeah,
seemingly out of nowhere. Can't see it out. It's all murky. It's all full of crap,
yeah.
and
Just as your
sometimes that happens so that you can clear it out.
Yeah, and just as your partner, sometimes it's really hard to witness because
Hmm.
I think, what I want to do is just reach my hand in there and like pull you the hell out. And
Yeah,
that
I've been
is
on that side too. It's so
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is not the kindest, most loving way to witness you
Yeah.
in that moment, right? It's
Yeah.
acknowledging that you're seeing this world around you in this way so that you can come through a clear understanding of why you're
Yeah.
seeing this. And I'm so grateful to you for doing that deep work
Mm.
because I think when we're not committed to saying, okay, like this looks like a pond of shit, like what's going
Yeah.
on here? Where are these deeply held beliefs? What needs to be witnessed? What needs to be loved? What needs to
Yeah.
be deshamed? What needs to be cleared? You're so intentional about holding yourself in those processes. But when we're not, what we're doing is we're letting all of that shit just build our lives around
Yeah.
us completely unconscious to it.
Yeah.
And it's hard, because yeah, it's hard for me, and I don't think I had the best way of expressing it, but like sometimes and I'm sure you feel the same way. Like we are co-creating now.
Yeah.
So both of our ponds are building the blueprint around us.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, your pond is fucking building this blueprint,
Yeah.
you know? And there's times where you're like, hey, your fucking air is fucking up our blueprint,
Yeah.
you know? And it's challenging because I think maybe we could talk about this on another episode,
Yeah.
but we have so many exact aspects in our charts,
Yeah.
such that we know that we're doing the deep work of healers in this
Yeah.
life, not just for others, but for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've met in each other that deep space that can hold that witnessing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, these deeper garden gates are being
It's
unlocked.
they're not going to be unlocked if it can't be held.
Right.
Yeah,
So
though.
as we walk in, yeah, so as we walk into this, and I also think astrologically, we could talk about
Yeah.
astrology maybe another time, but, and so what that looks like then is I'm like, Jen,
Yeah.
yeah, this is scarcity, this is lack, like let's do it. And you're being so grounded, your good earth energy, Capricorn is like, okay, well, you said to me earlier, if we want to buy a car, we know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
We go into a car dealership, we run our credit, we see what we can afford monthly.
Yeah.
We drive out a lot with a car.
And if you don't know what to do, you can Google it.
Yeah,
It's
done.
there.
Yeah.
You don't know if you want to, become more spiritual or you want to find like your soul's path.
Yeah.
You cannot Google that. You
No.
can't.
No. No, you
Yeah.
cannot. And I think it's interesting even so we have all of these
Hmm.
sort of like prescriptions for here's you want to buy a house?
Yeah. Here's
Great.
the steps.
Yeah, here you go talk to a mortgage lender, you get pre-approved for a mortgage, you talk to a realtor, you look at what's available on the market. There's sort of all of these And then when we get into the things that come after that, like not to come after that,
Yeah.
but I was thinking in the context of like, we know how to date, right?
Yeah.
We're like, okay, like here's how you date.
Yeah.
You can go to places that you have interest and hobbies in, see if somebody else is there. You can go to like singles mixers.
Yeah.
You can do like an online dating
Mm-hmm.
um platform. You can like here's how you date. And then you're like, okay, well, I want to call in soul aligned. I want to
Yeah.
call in my soulmate.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah.
you know? And I don't mean to say like what comes after, but like when you want a job, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I go on Indeed or I do whatever I
Yeah.
send my resume out to companies that I'm interested in working for. I introduce
Mm-hmm.
myself, I network. But like, what if you want to do your dharma? What if you
Yeah.
want to do your soul work that your soul came to this lifetime to do?
Mm-hmm.
What if you want to serve in a way that changes the world?
Mm-hmm.
Then what?
Yeah. Yeah, and not what comes after, but what comes outside
Yeah,
of that.
but I
Yeah.
do think maybe it is a come after because
Yeah, maybe you have to realize that it's not it.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
just was thinking that like, I was very successful in my career,
Yeah.
but the whole time I was aware that not only was I causing harm, but I also was not doing the thing that I came to do.
Yeah.
And I think, it's hard when we
Mm.
when we have those realizations and even in my previous relationship, like that moment that I realized that I was causing harm,
Yeah.
these are pivotal points in our journey
Yeah.
where we start to look at the impact that our actions have in the world around us. And so even
Mm-hmm.
if we're like, okay, like I know this isn't the job for me, or this job sucks, or this job is paying bureaucrats to harm others in other
Yeah.
countries, right? Like we have that awareness of what the impact of our actions
Yeah.
is. But I think that next layer is the opportunity cost
Yeah.
of not doing the thing that really
Sure.
serves our soul, that serves humanity,
Mm-hmm.
that serves Gaia,
Yeah.
that serves.
Mm.
And so there's like two parts of that process, like it, and maybe it is what comes next because
Yeah.
there's this attunement, there's this when you finally enter the inside of that garden, you've done the work to get inside and you look around and you're like, oh yeah, okay, none of this is aligned.
Yeah.
My job, my relationship, where I'm living, my house, my car, the clothes I'm wearing, none of this serves. And
Mm-hmm.
and this is the power of a rebirth because it's not called rebirth for no reason.
Yeah.
We can make these small changes in our lives. We can start to realize where we can have more impact. We see where we're not aligned. But there's so few opportunities in this life, in this society as
Yeah.
it lives now, to completely fresh start, right? You come out of one frequency into another. You
Mm-hmm.
shift timelines totally. And sometimes that happens because you come into contact with a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it happens because you come into contact with yourself in a really deep, meaningful way. We have
Mm-hmm.
these deeply pivotal, transformational moments in our lives and then fresh start.
Yeah.
Nothing. And this is where you were saying there's not really a blueprint to start to walk through that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I always say that we want to create the medicine that we need.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting as we're talking about creating this retreat space
Yeah.
to really hold people as they do the deep work. Your experience of not feeling deeply held and having no space to do the deep work,
Yeah.
right? So we're always trying to create what we need. This is the wounded healer aspect to
Yeah.
Chiron. We're trying to give the world like what we learned how to give ourselves.
Yeah.
And sure, it's super frustrating to not feel like you have any direction or blueprint.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even know the next step. Sometimes you don't even know what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
We have ideas of what I think we're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
and a big gap in between right now. We're sitting in this big gap where we don't know the next step. We know that the next step is not this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not this anymore. Can't do this again. Can't do it for another month. That's it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what it is instead.
Mm.
So I think that there's just a lot of challenging things, and like maybe you can imagine it as this, this birth, this
Yeah.
fresh start, and how like when a baby is born, especially here in Western cultures, it's handed to you like all like it's wiped off, and it's like, do you know what I mean? But this is a fresh start. Like this newborn baby is a fresh start,
Mm.
and everybody is, in awe of this fresh start.
Mm.
and not one person. Well, maybe like maybe, somebody in the back is acknowledging like all of the stickiness and messiness and
Mm.
everything that came with it, to
Pain
get to
and
this part. Yeah,
sacrifice.
pain and sacrifice on both parts, like because like the baby's getting pushed through a birth canal. That's
Yeah.
not easy on the baby. It comes in, the lights are bright, it's all disorienting,
Yeah. It
like
just came out of the
it
cosmic
just feels
source of
it
love.
just feels like this way to look at it. You have this fresh start and everybody's like, ah, fresh start, but they're not looking at everything that had to fall away, everything that you had to move through to get to this fresh start. And I do think that it's important to acknowledge that, especially, if you're moving through like the hard things right now
Mm.
towards a fresh start and you're getting there, but you don't know how long it's going to take. Is this baby coming in 8 minutes? Is it coming in 8 hours?
Mm.
You don't
Eight
know.
days,
You don't,
eight
yeah.
months,
Yeah,
eight years.
you don't know how long it's going to take,
Hmm.
right, to move through it. So I just really want to like acknowledge all of you who are sitting in this energy right now because I do know that it's not just us.
Mm.
There's the energy that's happening right now. There's so many fresh starts, so many people are making changes and making shifts and it can be a lot and I think that it can feel isolating again because there's no blueprint and you don't always see the other people who are doing it. And if you do, they're not doing it the same as you, you know?
And Jen, and I think it's important to recognize the power of our intention and held
Mm,
beliefs
yeah.
because this is how we start to dismantle our reality.
Yeah.
And sure, you can acknowledge all of the crunchy, messy suffering.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and there's an opportunity to create something that's wholly new.
Yeah.
And it's a gift. It's not just a responsibility. It is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's really important to also hold that excitement. We've talked about it
Yeah.
before, like it almost feels like for me, and potentially it's because I've been through this process so many times,
Yeah.
like I welcome these deaths
Yeah.
because I know on the other side of it, I'm being gifted with
Mm-hmm.
a different way to see myself or a different way to share my medicine, a different way to communicate with nature and God.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I mean to say is that I hear what you're saying
Yeah.
about how challenging it can feel.
Yeah.
And I just want to balance that by saying that it is beautiful and miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to witness these, it is nothing short of a miracle to find ourselves even one step closer to the life that we want to live.
Yeah.
Because I look at myself a year ago, like
Yeah.
I'm living a life that I could never have dreamed of. And so it's important to also acknowledge this miracle.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Mm.
I do agree.
Maybe I could offer us a way into how to feel like you're moving closer to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just, I just think I was trying to say if you're stuck in the sticky stuff to just don't, again, like know that it's there, like don't lose
Mm.
sight.
Yeah, it's so important to
Yeah.
be witnessed. I hear
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in this space that we're saying where you don't know what's coming next and you're
Mm-hmm.
just in the gap, some of the things that we've done, the work that we've been doing. You mentioned that we did the Sabrina Lynn's from Rewilding,
Yeah.
her workshop series over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that, because always what we're doing is taking in what we're seeing in the world around us and we're filtering it and siphoning it through our own lived experience, through our own internal teacher, our own compass, our own soul guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're doing the practices that feel important. And same with this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Same with any spiritual teaching or advice or wisdom or thought-provoking art and creativity. We're always observing it, and then we should be using our own discernment. How does this feel for me in my
Yeah.
life and my body? So after the Sabrina Lynn workshop, something that I did, a practice that I did yesterday or the day before, is, and maybe I can take us into that now.
Sure.
So we're sitting in this problem of I'm here in this rental and I want to be there in the field.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is the field?
Hmm.
If you, and I mean a physical
Yeah,
field
like
with
a
flowers.
piece of land with
Not
flowers.
the field
Yeah.
that we talk about sometimes.
Yeah.
No, like
Like a chunk of land.
a chunk of land.
Yeah.
So, and we looked on realtor.com, right? We're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
this
nothing.
this is possible. So, so rather than because we did sit in this moment together for a minute, oh, this is impossible. How are we
Hmm.
going to move from this space to that space? Where is that space? How is this possible? We don't have any
Hmm.
money. So here's what I did, and you can use this in any situation that you're feeling like really far from where you want to be. So whether that's a relationship or a job opportunity, a career, where you're living, it doesn't matter what you're trying to call yourself closer to.
Mm.
And maybe we can do this in an extended version sometimes, but just very quickly.
Yeah.
So, what I did was I came into my higher self, and we've talked about that before. It's getting still, getting quiet, calming your breathing, doing any of the rituals that you like to do when you're coming into this state, whether that's like lighting a candle or burning some incense or having a tea. However, you get into this state of listening, of receiving. And it's switching off from the doing to the being. It's switching off from the speaking to the listening. And so, however, we get into that state, I took myself there. I called myself into my higher self. I brought my awareness into the part of me that is infinite and is connected to source. And and I imagined myself laying on the land. And I imagined that as deeply as I wanted to connect with this land wanted to also connect with me. And I could feel that wanting to come together on both ends. So, not just a desire that I have to be on this land, but the desire that the land has for me to be on it. And I started to call in this felt sense in my body of reciprocity and giving back to the land and working deeper with the soil and the earth cycles. And I took myself into these feelings. How does it feel to be here? And then I asked for help, friends. And however your prayer practice looks, whether you have a prayer practice or you're triggered by that word prayer, I asked for help. I asked to be shown what the next step was. Land, can you move a bit closer so I can see what the path looks like from here to there? And then I closed my practice in gratitude. And this is the way.
Hmm.
And so when we ask for help, we release expectation of the outcome, what it looks like, and we start to open ourselves to curiosity, what comes in after that. So
Hmm.
the very next day, we already have an example in our lives. This is what the path might look like.
Yeah.
And so taking action.
Yeah.
Okay, what does this look like? What could this look like? Having that curiosity to take that next
Yeah.
action and also keeping discernment alive. Maybe that's not a good fit, but maybe
Yeah.
the finding out that that's not a good fit is actually a step
Yeah.
on the path.
Yeah,
And this
exactly.
helps refine the vision.
Yeah, and I think the taking action is super, super important because we could have been sent this message from somebody saying like, "Hey, talk to this person,"
Yeah.
and then gone, "Ooh, wow, that seems aligned. This came up right away," and then never messaged them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe they won't message back. Maybe
Yeah,
again, they'll
but
say, "We're looking for this." Okay, well, at least we did it, but we both were like, "This is kind of scary to send this message," you
it's
know?
because we've already done the death process that
Yeah,
comes before that.
sure.
Because all the time what happens is this next thing comes in and then you're like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
And then what happens is that deep part of yourself that believes that you're not worthy of that gets triggered.
Yes.
This is just a process.
It's
It's the process of expansion.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is what we can do. We can start to align ourselves with the parts of us that are already creator consciousness that
Yeah.
already know. And so even if we're struggling with that in our human body, in
Hmm.
our thinking mind, there's this deeper
Yeah.
awareness that we can tap into whenever.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, beautiful.
I think sometimes, and we each are also guilty of this, I think sometimes we think that our special things, the things that are special about us, are beautiful soul gifts and wisdom are like normal things. This
Yeah.
happens to us all the time, I feel like. And
Yeah.
even as we witness that in others, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm just incredibly good at this.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, you're really fucking good at that. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, it's just this.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're really good at that. And even with ourselves, we do this all the time. And so I think there's a this feels important for me now
Mm-hmm.
in as we start to talk about doing things differently in order to bring more of your voice online. As we start to think about fresh starts, acknowledging the destruction that's run
Yeah.
through your life, what's left. We can start to tune into these things. We can ask to be shown from the world around us, from our friends and our partners, from our guides, our higher intelligence.
Yeah.
Like, what is this thing that's special about me? You
Yeah.
know, because you probably think it's normal. It's not normal. It's so special.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time. And
Yeah.
so I just think it's between now and next week, maybe this is something that you can hold
Yeah.
is the intention to start to see where your light is shining in a way that
Mm.
is not normal
Yeah, quote
or
unquote.
yeah, it's that is so special
Mm-hmm.
and whether you're receiving that validation from the world around you or not does not matter. It's still the special thing and you
Yeah.
can start to align to it.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult when you're not receiving the validation. We did talk about this earlier. We didn't talk about it on the
Yeah,
podcast today, but
we've talked about it other
yeah,
times.
I think it's all a part of it. It's all a
Mm-hmm.
part of it. This feeling of like not having a blueprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Fresh starts.
Fresh starts.
Ooh, it is time. It's so time, friends.
Mm-hmm.
Step in because you shining at your highest is going to help other people shine at theirs, you know? Such a gift.
Okay, friends, hoping that this conversation served.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really working hard on getting some sort of community set up,
Yeah.
a way to have a more interactive space together.
Yeah, if this is something that interests you, like please leave a comment. You
Mm,
know, do you want to have a community where we can all get together and chat maybe in between or yeah, have some practices maybe.
yeah. Until next week.
Till next week. Thanks for coming.
Hope this serves.
Hope it serves.